Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, and Ben Sinnott, all pass catchers from the 2024 NFL draft class. What else do they have in common? Their teams are going to need them to show up in training camp. We're going to discuss them and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I am a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our every day. As I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. If you can hear my voice, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft. DP, today's show, we're talking training camp preview, man. We're talking some wide receivers, and we threw a tight end. Can Brian Thomas Jr. beat out Gabe Davis for that role as that big, explosive, vertical threat down the field for Mr. Trevor Lawrence? And then Keon Coleman steps into being the starter role. Stephon Diggs is now in H-Town. So what does Keon Coleman have to do for the Buffalo Bills to finally make it to the Super Bowl? And we're going to wrap this thing up with Mr. Do-It-All himself, Mr. Ben Sinnott, right? I like to call him the Kyle Juszczyk of the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to talk about Ben Sinnott wrapping up this draft podcast. But DP, before we get started, man, why don't you hit him with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Brian Thomas Jr., I think if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, Keith, you paid Gabe Davis, so of course you believe to an extent on his ability and everything he brings to the table. I think the main thing we're going to ask is the consistency, the level of production. Is he your wide receiver one, wide receiver two? I think if you're Trevor Lawrence and you're the head coach, you're the OC, you're looking at the situation with the thought in mind. You may not say it out loud, but you're hoping that our first round pick can beat him out as that big body, explosive outside threat, that he's actually the number 2 receiver in the pecking order. Because I think the offense is going to run probably through, especially early on, through Christian Kirk. He's the guy that has the most. Matter of fact, Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, those two guys.
That's what I was going to mention, DP, Evan Ingram. Yep.
They both have proven that they have chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. They can get open. They make the catches that he needs. They're going to be what he needs, where he wants them and needs them to be within this offensive structure. So for me, it's like, okay, those guys will probably be the number 1, number 2 targets early on. Now it's about, okay, when we need the big explosive play, there's a lot of moving parts for the Jaguars. Getting Travis Etienne going, right? But then also, is it Travis? Yeah, Travis Etienne.
Yeah, Travis,
getting confused with his little brother, but getting Travis Etienne going. But also there's a lot of talk out of Duval County about getting Tank Bigsby going earlier this year and getting that 2-headed run game going. So what does that mean? I always talk about changing the math, changing the levels. And if you can get the play action pass or the play action game going with the run game, off of the run game, now you got the one-on-ones down the field. And I don't know, Gabe Davis has made some big plays in his career, Keith. I don't know if he's going to be able to make bigger, more explosive splash plays than a guy who specializes in that than Brian Thomas Jr.
I agree 100%. And I think that's the role that would have to be the role that you drafted Brian Thomas for, right? Because we've watched him as a draft prospect, and while he has many likable traits, we also identify there are some key things that need to be developed, right? And route running and winning in the short to intermediate portions of the field is a huge part of that, right? So when you draft him as a rookie, you draft him as a first rounder, I believe what he top 25 pick. You take him. I think that you can't necessarily spend time early on waiting till he's fully developed, right? Like, you want to employ this guy. And the way that the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver room is set up, DP, is that it's going to be guys that do specific things, right? The way Christian Kirk wins is going to be specific to how Christian Kirk wins. Gabe Davis, we know who Gabe Davis was from his time in Buffalo, right? Like he's going to, sparingly have those big explosive plays, right? Be that big body guy that can work down the field. So Brian Thomas has to be that vertical threat. And I like that you always bring up the fact of Trevor Lawrence and the body types that he was used to throwing the football to, and how this make it potentially work for Brian Thomas Jr. paired with Trevor Lawrence. I like the situation. Can he beat out Gabe Davis? I don't know if he'll be asked to beat out Gabe Davis, DP, as much as he'll be asked to do his specific role early on. Even the clips that we've seen out of, rookie, I guess, with the OTAs, mini camps, now we're heading into training camp, right? The clips of Brian Thomas, a lot of the stuff has been deep crosses and vertical routes and big plays, which was what he did at LSU. So I can expect potentially some play action stuff and then take the vertical shots with Brian Thomas down the field.
No, I agree with that as well. I think, and that's kind of, truthfully, it's kind of similar to the way Gabe Davis wins a lot. Like
with Buffalo, I know.
It's the exact same type of way, but it's like, you're looking at it because, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, and I'm happy. That's why I was so excited about the Brian Thomas pick, because they finally got him. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy about the Gabe Davis signing too, because you finally gave him a big body receiver that he can grow with, especially with a Brian Thomas Jr. Watching with T. Higgins, Justin Ross, like it looks so different than him throwing to Amari Rodgers that last year at Clemson.
Yeah, and I know that they had to I know financials, right, probably played some part in this, but essentially what they did in a sense was kind of swap out Brian Thomas Jr. Well, swap out Calvin Ridley for Brian Thomas Jr. I want to ask you, do you believe that that's a fair trade? Or do you think it's a winning trade? Like, which one would you rather? Would you rather have Calvin Ridley at this point, or would you rather have Brian Thomas taking everything into consideration?
I'd rather have Calvin Ridley and Brian Thomas. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have that than, because essentially the move to pay Gabe Davis, what they paid him, essentially allowed Calvin Ridley walk, right? So it's like, all right, we let Calvin Ridley walk, we pay Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, of course, I think got a little bit less than Calvin got like 75 guaranteed for 3 years from Tennessee. But if you could have found a way to keep Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville and then still draft Brian Thomas, I think you look at a receiver core or receiving options of Travis Etienne out of the backfield, Evan Ingram at tight end, Christian Kirk in the slot, putting Calvin back at the Z where he belongs and not at the X, because they used him at the X far too often last year, or after he returned, and that's not his natural position. You put him back at the Z. Now you got Brian Thomas at the X, and it's like, and I forgot they drafted Brenton Strange last year. The time,
they drafted him early too. I think in the second round. Yep,
second round, and these athletic Theo Johnson, these athletic tight ends from Penn State. Hey man, Iowa's kind of whooping y'all right now as tight end. I need you guys to show up in the league, but I think that would have looked like a very well-rounded group where I kind of feel like the skill sets of Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. is a little redundant in a sense. You know what I mean? So I would have rather had Calvin and Brian Thomas rather than
I kind of somewhat agree with you with the Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis situation. So we'll see how that pans out with the Jacksonville Jaguars with rookie Brian Thomas. Next up, we're talking Mr. Keon Coleman, Mr. Still the headlines himself, right? Has been a walking showstopper since he's been drafted to the Buffalo Bills, man. It seems like he's going to be very good for the game of football and the NFL, especially with his pressures. We're going to talk about Keon Coleman, the player, though. What are the expectations with the Buffalo Bills? What does he need to do to fill out this role? How do the Buffalo Bills get on track to making it to the Super Bowl? We're going to talk about Keon Coleman coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And with summer winding down, there's no better time or place to get in on the action and go and enjoy this last couple of weeks of summer before school with the family by going to your local or your favorite MLB park. Game Time can help you with that because they're going to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can do that with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Buffalo Bills second round pick. I think he was the first pick that they made in the 2024 NFL draft. Keon Coleman out of Florida State, the big 6'3", 6'4", 210 plus pound receiver. I think his path to absolutely starts and begins in training camp. And I think for him, it's going to be winning. It's going to be dominating on the outside, right? And winning in the ways that he wins. Short area quickness, quick footedness, quick feet, being able to win the horizontal routes, so in breakers, things of that, making those bigger receiver type receptions. Because we know that Khalil, similar to what we just talked about with Christian Kirk, Khalil Shakir is going to man the slot. We know that he's going to be in the slot. He's going to be the guy that's going to be probably their most relied upon third down chain mover, because teams are probably going to try to take away Dalton Kincaid a lot this year, knowing that he's the guy. Seeing how he performed down the stretch last year, I expect him to get a lot of defensive coverage. If that leaves Keon Coleman as the X one-on-one, there isn't another receiver on this roster that can fill that role, truthfully. You also had brought in Curtis Samuel, the Buffalo Bills did, which I like that move as well. The only thing about it, you just talked about it in the first segment with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., if you look at their snap counts last year, not Chris Kirk, but Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel both dominated out of the slot. So it's like, all right, when we go to 2 wide receiver sets, who's going to be on the field? Even when we go to 3 wide receiver sets, if you want them both on the field, who's aligning where? And that's going to be a big key, again, for Keon Coleman. Go out there, make those contested grabs, because nobody else in this team is going to be able to make the catches look as routine as you can. Being a big body receiver, playing post up, playing basketball above the rim, but also just being a reliable, trustworthy weapon. And then also in the quick game, this is a punt returner, a guy who has return ability. What does that do is when you get the ball in his hands, he knows how to weave in and out of traffic, how to find blocks and angles and find space to daylight. He can do those things. So get him the ball in the quick game, whether it's mesh concepts, quick slants, smoke screens, quick hitches, whatever it is. Let Keon be Keon. And I think if they do that, he's got a real strong chance to start, because, like, what do you want to do? You want to walk out there week 1 with Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and two wires in 12 personnel? Like, no, I'm not running out there with that. Like, I got a run block, man. We gotta run the ball a little bit. Like, so I'm cool getting Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, but if I got 2 small receivers, yeah, no, you're not fooling anybody. He was like, oh, well, we're going to go ahead and corral a run game. So I think Keon Coleman has a leg up just as a natural X, because I don't think there's another receiver, maybe Justin Shorter out of Florida, but he was like a 6th round pick. You know what I mean? I don't think that he has the cachet or the game to be able to knock Keon Coleman out of that X receiver spot.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of those situations where it's like draft and immediately replace, right? Where there isn't any room. Like they don't have much time, even honestly, for Keon Coleman to develop or get acclimated. Like, he has to hit the ground running, because this is a team, we talked about Super Bowl, right? But the threshold is I feel like for AFC East / Buffalo Bills fans, right, was the expectation for the Buffalo Bills to be in a running to win the AFC East and definitely be a playoff team. So you can't afford to lose games. And I'll say this, that the AFC East has gotten a lot more competitive, right? Because all you have to do is insert a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and then now it's a 3-team race in the AFC East, right? Like the Buffalo Bills, I don't even think, maybe they regressed a little losing some talent, but it's more about the other teams also getting better. When we talk about the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. So I look at Keon Coleman, and like I said, he has to hit the ground running to make plays for the Buffalo Bills. But should that be the expectation? I'm gonna go this route. We've seen rookies come on the scene, in the past few years. You talk about Justin Jefferson, you talk about Jamar Chase. I didn't name those guys because they were just LSU guys, but I think they were the most I think that's most familiar, right?
Sure. Sure.
Last year we didn't have. I don't think Jordan Addison was close to being a breakout, right? Until Kirk Cousins got hurt and it kind of went down. But I'm trying to think. Even a year before that, maybe Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, but not to the magnitude of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. I want to ask you: does Keon Coleman have an opportunity? Because we always say, well, I say, and I know you talk about quarterbacks in this light, but I say that wide receiver is the most dependent position on the football field. He has a high-level quarterback to get him the football. So can Keon Coleman be that football player that gets that 1,200, 1,300 yards as a rookie? Can he replicate what Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson was able to do in the past as a rookie?
I mean, that's for one, that's a tall order because of what the type of seasons those guys had. And I think that from a talent standpoint, I think he can. You know what I mean? And the reason why, at the end of the day, when you lose Stephon Diggs, you lose Gabe Davis, you lose the outside long ball, the deep ball down the field. And I know some people are like, well, he ran a 4.6 or whatever he ran.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is he going to replace that?
Like, I think he can, because I remember correctly. I can look it up. I don't think Gabe Davis ran that fast when he came out of college. But his play speed,
he don't look like he run that fast either. So
no, but he still was able to stretch. He still was able to stretch the vertical plane, right? Like he still was able to stretch defenses vertically. Yeah, he ran a 4.55, 4.54, somewhere in there. Like he was not now granted, it's a little bit faster than a 4.6, but at the same time, I watched Puka Nacua win vertically against guys one-on-one. You know what I mean? He also ran close to that time, or was, projected around that time as well. So I think he could bring it, mainly because of the ball skills, the body control, back shoulder fade. If it's one thing that Josh Allen does, is he trusts his weapons. And when you have a quarterback that trusts you, he trusts his weapons, he's going to give you a chance. And again, I go back to it. Like, I just pulled up the Bills depth chart to look at the receivers, right? You got Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. You got Chase Claypool, Mac Hollins, Andy Isabella, Justin Shorter, KJ Hamler. You know what all I heard? And Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I didn't hear a single name that can do what Keon Coleman can do. Like, you might say Chase Claypool, but how long have we been waiting for Chase Claypool? Like, we've been waiting for a long time. So it's like, he is who he is at this point. I think that Keon Coleman has a chance to be a breakout guy simply because one thing Josh Allen is not about to let you do is box him in. That is not about to happen. Josh Allen is not about to sit there and be like, defenses are going to put me in this box. We're going to have to throw short dink and dunk plays. I'm not Tom Brady. I'm not going to kill you, and you're not going to die by a death of 1,000 cuts. I am going to get the deep ball. I'm going to make some aggressive plays. And then you think about the scramble drill too. Like being able to just find that big target down the field that is Keon Coleman, who can out jump a lot of defensive backs, post those guys up at the catch point. Yeah, no, I think he has a chance to have a breakout rookie season. I think it's going to depend on, similar to, I think we've talked about it with so many other veteran quarterbacks. As a rookie, just coming in and getting that trust. Like if I tell you to be here, be here. If I say cut this off at 12, cut it off at 12. Don't run it at 14. If he does the things that Josh Allen needs him to do, and I mean, remember the reports pre-draft, they said Josh Allen wanted him on the team. So I highly doubt that the quarterback himself who wanted this young man isn't going to find a way to get that chemistry going and get him the football early in game or early in the season. I think he can be a breakout candidate. And if so, it's going to be a lot of people kind of reassessing. And I think this happens, right? Every draft, if something we preconceived notion doesn't go to plan, and then we get to the season, it's like, well, okay, well, I didn't think Tank Dell could be successful because he was 165. Well, Josh Downs shouldn't be successful because he's 170. It's like, so should we start viewing smaller receivers different? People are going to start looking at it as like, well, should we finally put a kiss of death to the 40 time? Spoiler alert, yes, we should. But the point is, I think Keon Coleman has that type of chance, that opportunity to kind of hush a lot of those doubters who said he wasn't fast enough, he's not athletic enough, he's not a great enough route runner. And it's like, well, we'll see, because I've seen DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, who are both extremely raw route runners, coming out of Ole Miss, where they ran like 35 plays every game. I watched those guys develop, and I think Keon Coleman could do the same.
Yeah, I think so too. I believe in Keon Coleman over here. DP, let's wrap this thing up, man, with Mr. Ben Sinnott, the do-it-all offensive weapon. Yes, I call him offensive weapon, even though he's a tight end slash fullback. We're going to talk about how does he insert himself into this Washington Commanders offense, right? We know that they have Terry McLaurin, they have Jahan Dotson, they just drafted with the number 2 overall pick, Mr. Jayden Daniels, but they need some physicality, right, in this offensive scheme. We're going to talk about Ben Sinnott and how he fits in with the Washington Commanders coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your number one ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or you get your money back. Why? Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your number one ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. Ben Sinnott, Kansas State tight end. Now Washington Commander.
Yeah, this was a curveball, DP. I thought we was gonna go wide receiver. You threw in the tight end there. You threw in the tight end, but
that was strategic, Keith.
I appreciate it. Keep people on their toes, man. Have to keep them on their toes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, 6'4", 250. They have Zach Ertz in front of him right now, and I think some people say it's low hanging fruit. You know, for me, I think Ben Sinnott, his path to contributing is going to be out of 12 personnel sets right now, and that's going to be his run game. Mm-hmm. Watching him run block at Kansas State, I'll never forget watching them against Texas, and it gave me Rob Gronkowski vibes because you don't see tight ends do this no more. That wham block from the tight end spot on a D tackle, like most of these tight. Listen, I love Travis Kelce, but he's not doing that. You know what I'm saying? George Kittle might, because he's crazy enough. George Kittle don't care. Gronk was the same way. But a lot of these tight ends, Darren Waller wasn't doing that. Like, you know, a lot of these guys aren't blocking Haloti Ngata on a wham block like Gronk would do. And watching Ben Sinnott do that to Byron Murphy, who's like, we saw him up close and personal this year at the at the combine. This is a big dude, Keith. That's a big, strong boy. And, you know what I mean? And to be able to wham block him and then secure and seal that block was one of the more impressive blocks I've seen from a tight end prospect in a while. So, like, the run game is going to be big for, you know, him, because I truly believe Dan Quinn's going to make sure Cliff Kingsbury runs that football. You got Brian Thomas Jr., you pay Austin Eckler to come in, even though it's for, I think, just a one-year deal. You're going to run the ball. And I think that's where we see the early contributions from Ben Sinnott, and then that opens up the play action pass, the seam ball, 6'4", 6'5", 250. What, he ran like a 4.5 something. He tested very, pretty athletic at the combine. Getting him going straight line up the seam, and then for him, I don't know how they have their locker room set up. I'm putting his locker right beside Zach Ertz, because I saw the maturation for Trey McBride after being with Zach Ertz for a year. And when you have that type of veteran in your room who's going to share that wealth of knowledge, I need you to do that for this young man, because he's got to me, and I mean, you view him differently. I really like Ben Sinnott, and I like his potential as a tight end. And I liked his route running for the most part on tape. Senior Bowl is a little up and down. It was definitely disappointing week at the Senior Bowl, but I think the lights were kind of bright down in Mobile for him and a couple other cats out there. But I think he's got a path of contributing. I think it's going to start in 12 personnel. Cliff Kingsbury knows Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz knows that offense and what Cliff Kingsbury needs in the passing game. He's going to be able to get right to his spots. He's probably going to be the Jason Witten of this offense, to be completely honest.
I don't mind that, because I would say this, just watching this is, and we probably differ on the film, right? I had concerns, and I think there were certain things that you were more comfortable with out of Ben Sinnott, right? And then for me, the Senior Bowl kind of confirmed a couple things for me that I had questions about on film. So I'll say this, like when you talk about the path for Ben Sinnott contributing, I think you started it off right. You talk about the run game, right? And just being one of those movement pieces, right? One of those insert guys, like you talk about the wham block, but can he be the lead blocker? Can he be the backside guy on a bootleg, right? That crosses the line of scrimmage, and he's able to, catch the handoff in the flats, right? And then turn upfield and then use his athleticism in that way. I think he could be that. I think he can be the offensive identity as a tough, rugged football player, right? And I want to say the general manager for the Commanders, he came from the 49ers.
I believe so. Adam Peters, I think.
Yeah, I believe he came from the 49ers. And where I'm going with that is the comp that I had for Kyle Juszczyk, even before the general manager came over there. I mean, the comp I had for him was Kyle Juszczyk, right? Mm-hmm. And I would not be surprised if the general manager drafted him that. As a matter of fact, DP, I watched the Washington Commanders, their draft series, right? Like all the teams are releasing them on YouTube, and I was watching it as they go through the process during the draft. And when I think Adam Peters and Cliff Kingsbury just had a quick conversation like, hey, I'm thinking about taking him. How you feel about him? And then Cliff was like, yeah, I mean, he can do it all, right? And I think that's the role that you allow him to do, is let him do it all. Let him be kind of your chess piece, but your chess piece not for your versatile offensive explosive weapon, but your chess piece because he gives you numbers in the run game, because he does different things, because people don't pay attention to him. The chess piece of physicality, right? That he's going to get matched up on, hopefully a linebacker, and he's able to whip him in the run game. Or maybe they walk an extra safety down into the box and it's him versus a safety, and he's able to give you a +1 in the run game. So I think he'll be your chess piece and your movement piece from that perspective. Also just catching the ball in the flats.
Oh, especially early on, I absolutely see that type of game plan for him. Just get him on the field, put him in multiple spots and alignments, fullback, H-back, on inline tight end, in the slot. You can move him around pre-snap because of his ability, like I said, to block, but also straight line speed, catching the ball, give him those easy alleyways to go from receiver to runner. That transition, give him, like I said, those little quick dump offs in the flats, things like that will make his life easy, as well as it'll make Jayden Daniels' life easy, right? Those bootlegs, quick, easy look, easy read, boom, get into the flat. Don't have to look down the field and not a high-low read like that. Just get the ball out of your hands, protect yourself, get it to your playmakers, distribute it, and let these guys make plays. So I'm excited to see. I think the one-on-ones for him going to be big, especially that they got some talented safeties over there in Washington. They got some athletic linebackers. So seeing him against his own team and his own defense, how does he handle those pass sets? Going to be a real telltale on how high they'll be on him as a receiving option early in the season.
I agree. But I like it, though, because I like the balance that he provides, right? You don't want to be known as a finesse team. You want to have some physicality to you. And I think Ben Sinnott can do that. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to comment and make sure you subscribe at the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like I always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we're closing out the week talking about tight ends, coming to tight ends from the 2024 NFL Draft class, their paths to contributing, paths to success, expectations. We're going to discuss it all on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.